Hi, this is Teresa Martin with Lower Cape TV, and welcome to this episode of Red Nun Talks. With me today is Darrin Tangeman, and he's the town manager in the town of Truro, where they've had a very interesting fall season. And what has happened there has raised a lot of questions that I think are very relevant to the entire Cape and Islands region. So welcome. It's great to have us joining us today.
Thanks, Teresa.
So can you just start off by giving us, in a nutshell, what has happened over the fall in Truro around voting and some significant town issues?
So what we've seen in the last, since October 21st, when we originally tried to have a special town meeting, we had some citizens bring up some issues in terms of voter registration. First of all, there's been definitely an increase in terms of the number of residents who want to participate in the democratic process, town meeting, or legislative process. But we also had some information that came out to the town where our local part-time taxpayer association had been encouraging part-timers to try to register to vote. And some of our citizens found that to be problematic. We had to reach out to town council and they provided some guidance to our select board to have them better, and our community to better understand what it is to be legally or properly registered in the town of Truro as a voter for town meeting and our future elections. And so we put that information out. We ended up moving towards town meeting, their special town meeting. That meeting was actually postponed, or what was called continued, several times. And then on the 28th of November, there was a large number of residents that came to our largest facility that we have to conduct a town meeting. And we just didn't have the capacity to hold that many. It was unprecedented. There was well over 700 individuals that were there to vote at town meeting and participate in town meeting.
So basically, it was questions of who can vote.
Yeah.
How does local level democracy work, all set against a backdrop of some issues of housing and municipal operations. So a lot of topics that people are really struggling with. And the Cape, of course, has a significant percentage of residents who are part-time residents or seasonal residents. I mean, Truro is one of the highest on the Cape, right?
I think we might be the highest. I think we're at 80%. I think Cape Cod Commission report stated we're at around 80%, which makes 20% year-round residents. That's a pretty low number. And they're the ones that, the 20% is what are typically those who are around to provide the services year-round for the community or work in the local retail or service industry for the town and in the region. So
there's this really common misperception, I think, across the Cape and the islands that people who can vote are people who are full-time residences. And sometimes people think people who can vote are people who own a residence. And I think that really got clarified in this whole process. Can you talk a little bit about what happened?
Well, first of all, this isn't a matter of opinion. We've sought legal guidance from both the state AG's office and our town council because it's such a critical issue. I mean, we want local residents to participate in the democratic process, ones who are legally and properly registered to vote in town, who truly are trying to make Truro their long-term residence. What was being put out to the community was that, you can vote in Truro and then change your vote back to your other community. And that was very problematic. Our town council weighed in. A state election expert, David Sullivan, also weighed in publicly about it and said, no, that's not proper. And so the intent is that if you're going to make Truro your home, it's going to need to be your civil, your social center of your life. If you have children, they need to be in the school. If you're working in Truro, you're all the things. It's the preponderance of that evidence that directs people to believe, a rational person to believe, that Truro is your home, and if it's in another direction, then that should be where your home is at. If it's another location in Massachusetts or another state,
right? Because in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the law is you get to vote in one place. And that place is where you live full time.
Correct.
Right. It's very pretty straightforward, right?
Correct. And that's what we support. Obviously, we support the law. We support the rule of law. And so the conversation with town council was just about how do we ensure that the law is being complied with, and that we're not disenfranchising our local voters by allowing individuals who should be voting somewhere else to vote in town meeting. And that was the larger conversation that was happening in town, is that we just want to make sure our residents are properly registered, that they're truly making Truro their home, the long-term home. So
I know this is a conversation that's been mirrored in most of the towns across the Cape and the islands in some way, shape, or form. So as a town manager, when you look at this, how do you try to find a balance between people who are seasonal and people who are year-round, who care passionately about the town, but because of where they reside full-time, may have a different right to have a voting opinion? But how do you find that balance?
Well, it was one of the things that was brought to my attention when I first became town manager at Truro, is that it was really important to balance those relationships between our part-time residents and our year-round residents, and that there was some tension between the two groups. They both, in general, both groups, I believe, loved the town of Truro. They truly enjoy their time in the town. But in order to balance the two legal statuses of both groups, what I thought, what our select board has, they believe, is that we should be engaging our part-time residents on a pretty regular basis, giving them a voice and to raise their concerns, make recommendations for the town. Ultimately, they don't have the opportunity to vote in the legislative process or at the ballot, but we should be listening to them because they do provide the majority of our tax base for the town, and they do have an impact. And we want them to be able to be heard. So a lot of the things that we do in Truro is to try to give those opportunities for our part-time residents to be heard. Obviously, our voters, our year-round residents, are heard at the ballot. They're heard at town meeting as legal voters. And so that's generally our approach.
What are some of the things that you have done or maybe you're planning to do after really grappling with this fall?
Because there's been a really tense situation. I've made a concerted effort, work with a select board to develop these communication and engagement strategies to really reach out and meet with local residents in person, through town manager coffees, get early in the morning, meet at different locations in town, be there to speak about anything. Sit down at a round table. We're not speaking to you, we're speaking to each other, giving an opportunity for people to voice their concerns and ask questions, general questions about the community and how things might have happened and how we can fix them and get their concerns about it. So maybe we can incorporate those ideas into future policy. We're going to look at, I'm doing Facebook Lives where I'm getting with specific department heads and talking about a specific issue, but it's an opportunity virtually for individuals to ask us questions during those conversations. We're going to do some listening sessions on critical issues in town in the lead up to the summer. And I have office hours as well. I have open office hours on Mondays and by appointment through the week, where I do meet with local residents to talk about a number of different issues. And I'm saying not just local residents, I'm open to anybody in the community who wants to speak to us. And lastly, some of the things that we're going to do as well at the town meeting in May is we're going to open up an opportunity for local petitioners who want to put a petition article on the ballot to meet with staff on the warrant and meet with staff and have an informal consult to discuss what the potential impacts of those articles are from a policy and operational perspective. Because often this divide has kept our local residents from wanting to engage staff. They would rather create policy in a vacuum because they're concerned about a number of different issues. We want to be open and transparent about engaging the residents and giving them critical advice that they need to know whether their policies are going to have a second or third order effect on operations, on budgeting, on staffing, a number of different things. So those are just a few things that we're working on. And we want to continue to develop new opportunities as well to communicate and engage the community.
You said a couple of words that I think are really important, and that, 100 years ago, our towns were fairly small and everyone kind of knew everybody, and a lot of conversation happened in informal ways, but it's a very different world now. So the terms communication and transparency, I think, have taken on a new level of criticality, I guess. How are you moving forward on both of those fronts?
Well, one of the things that I did working with the select board is we created a communications and marketing position in town. And some other towns have recently done similar things. They realize, being a town manager from off Cape and outside of Massachusetts, I worked with the International City County Management Association. One or two of the most critical positions I've seen as a city manager, town manager, is a communications position, because people need to understand the value, first of all, of what staff and what town administration provides in return for the tax dollars that they're paying, and also we want to be able to give an opportunity. There's some kind of engagement or input process where community members can truly convey their concerns and recommendations to the town, so that we can incorporate that into elected body policy and future legislation. So it's a two-way street. And creating those types of positions, I think that's what we've done, is we created that position. I think it was a very critical step in trying to address transparency and communication.
Yeah, and having formal channels of communications is a good thing, and it's something that we often don't stop and think about. Like, communication just happens, but it has to happen with intent and in a predictable way. And I think my experience is a lot of times municipalities and indeed government at all levels, it's almost an afterthought sometimes.
It's so important. It never ends. I think having worked a decade as a city manager, I think that it's critically important to continue the process. You may have to repeat things with the community, repeat an educational process multiple times over the years, because residents change out or they forget about key issues. One of the things that I've done in other communities at some point, I think we want to do in Truro, and what my police chief, Jamie Khaleesi, is doing, is at a more micro level, is a citizens academy. And that's, I want to do that. I did it in my previous two communities, established citizens academies, where we bring in residents from all walks of life and different perspectives on town policy, and we get them engaged in the process. It's a kind of a Socratic method where you bring in people who are both in opposition and proponents of the town's services and operations and policies, and they work together. They may voice concerns about certain things, others voice support, and they get to understand what we do in each department, how many personnel we have, how much funding we have, what kind of equipment we have, and what policies and procedures we have in place to provide those services. And so people get a better understanding, and we're very transparent about it. And then they can ask really hard questions of our staff, because they're right there presenting the information. It's probably been one of the best opportunities that I've seen. It's something we want to do in the future in Truro. What we want to do is expand on what the police department's doing, because they have a great citizens academy, and we want to expand that to all the departments at some point, probably in the next year or so. Yeah,
I know. And we have town meeting form of government on the Cape, and it seems that when the populace as a whole is your legislative body, having that populace as a whole understand the real dynamics becomes that much more important.
The other piece is to humanize the town administration and the boards, committees, and commissions to the public, like getting them to know them and understand that they are your neighbor, they're your the person that's you're standing behind at the coffee shop, and that they're not some amorphous employee that doesn't have a face. And so it's important that we humanize the town, and we get employees and our community together so that they can really understand what we do on a daily basis on their behalf.
One thing that strikes me is in what you've just gone through over the fall is that the issues that seem to trigger this intense desire to participate are the ones that every community across the region is dealing with. Housing, municipal operations would be kind of the two hot buttons, spending money on ensuring there's housing available for people and spending money to ensure that the municipality can function the best that it can. How does communications fit in with those issues as well?
I think one of the big one of the attention setters for the town was the fact that there was legislation that was passed both at the town meeting and at the ballot for a community sustainability initiative last year that provided support to our local families so that they could participate in the workforce. And what it did is it provided K through kindergarten and after school childcare throughout the year that allowed the parents, one parent or both parents, to be able to participate in the workforce with so few viable, town residents that can actually participate in the workforce because we're such a small town with a pretty broad. We have as a region, we have a lot of retail and service industry job opportunities. And what we found is that a lot of those businesses can't stay open throughout the year or stay, even though there's a demand for it. It provided an opportunity for us to have more local residents in the workforce. So that's one of the things we're looking at.
So communicating that is part of the challenge. I mean, you say we have an issue staffing our businesses. Yeah. The town came up with a pretty clever, novel solution for how can you free people and make it possible for them to do that. But communicating that to the people who are perhaps seasonal, who see that as some sort of my tax money is paying to support these people, that seems to be a place where communication becomes the sauce that makes it stick. Yeah.
There's a number of statistics or anecdotal issues that came to our attention that really drove that conversation. 50% of the workforce comes over the bridge. It's Cape Cod Commission report that more than 50% of the workforce comes across the bridge to work on the Cape, and that means that only 50% of the workforce actually resides. Less than 50% resides on the Cape.
It's a very long drive, by the way, from the bridge to Truro.
It is.
That's no small thing.
Yeah, and I mean, probably there's probably more people who live on the Cape that work in Truro. It's probably more of the Sandwich or Barnstable or other towns that are closer to Bourne that probably take advantage of those employees. But I think that it's a critical issue for us that we're trying to assist. We're trying to assist trying to assist our departments in getting employees to work for them on the Cape. So I'm sorry if you can just repeat. Maybe got off topic there, but
no, I think that actually it's a really interesting point that we're all struggling with these issues, and some of the solutions are things that people who may not be here full time don't fully realize how those solutions actually meet a need that they have as well.
I think one of the other issues is outside of town staff is that we have an aging population. I think our median age in Truro is well over 60, and as a result, healthcare becomes really critical for our community and the Outer Cape in general. Because for instance, Truro, we're 45 minutes from Cape Cod Hospital. We're one of the top 3 longest ALS advanced life support drives in the state of Massachusetts. And that we manage our own ALS transport system to get patients to the hospital. But with that being said, we truly need we need providers, either paramedics or LPNs, whatever it might be, to be able to provide either in-home care or emergency care as we move forward. And that's a part of the market. That's part of the job market. That deals with housing. That deals with cost of living. And so these are issues that we need to address long term if our population is going to need those types of resources, not just from the town, but from, just from a quality of life perspective.
Yeah. It seems it comes back again to engaging people who have a vested interest in Truro or any of our Cape towns being a good place to live. Is you don't think about emergency services until you need them. Yeah. But somehow through this process of engagement and communication, it seems to me that's how you get people to think about it and to understand there's a cost to it, and to get everyone involved in creative problem solving, because it's an issue that impacts everybody, whether you're here a week or you're here 52 weeks.
Yeah, in essence, I think all of the initiatives that we put forth benefit the entire community. Yeah. And I just don't know that it's as clear to many people who don't see those benefits. At some point in their life, they're going to need emergency health care. They're going to need law enforcement to assist them in some process, or public works to plow the road, or many of the other services that are in town, or just to get a coffee in town. And so these initiatives, you're right. I think communicating the impact and the positive impact that it has on everybody's lives is important, because I don't know that either people understand it as well as they should, or accept that as an outcome from those different policies and legislative actions that the town meeting takes and at the ballot.
Well, so that's kind of cool. You're talking about the Citizens Forum and putting it at a municipal level. That seems like a really neat way to both educate and expose people and engage them and have them be part of the whole, and understanding that they can help come up with the solutions too.
In terms of municipal forum,
the municipal. You were just telling me you were going to take the police model.
Oh yeah,
the Citizens Forum,
Citizens Academy.
Yeah,
correct.
Citizens Academy. Sorry.
Yeah,
that seems like it's a very interesting way to try and address that by bringing people in and having them really understand what the dynamics are. And
I will say that one of the things that I think is important is really kind of there's not really a simple action that you take with anything that we do in town. There's policies that are associated with, there's bylaws, regulations, whatever it is. And the easier we can make it for community members to understand what those limitations, constraints, and different processes are, the better off we are. And that's what a Citizens Academy is. It helps reduce tension, because people who don't understand or have questions about an approach. I mean, I've been involved as a customer or a consumer of municipal services in other towns myself, and become frustrated myself with the process. So I see that for the town of Truro, and we really need to make sure that we're streamlining our services and we're listening to the public about how can we make this process better, while still maintaining the protections that really are expected for our residents through the regulatory process or whatever it might be. But
I think it's kind of cool because there's more than one way to participate and make change. Yeah. And I think sometimes people defaulted to thinking, well, that's why I want to vote in town meeting. That's the only way I can make a change. But I'm not on the state legislative body, but that doesn't mean I don't have a say in trying to have different views and different approaches taken at the state level. I don't need to be a voting member of a body in order to make something happen.
Yeah, but at the same time, we can get, I think, an opportunity for residents to participate. We have 35 committees, commissions, and boards in Truro.
Oh
35.
My gosh.
Think about that. So, and each one has between 5 and 7 residents.
Does anyone not sit on a board in Truro?
Well, I mean, what we have is a lot of the same people sitting on different boards. But outside, and this is part of the Massachusetts form of local government. Right. I will say that outside of the state of Massachusetts or the Commonwealth, there's not nearly as many boards. But I think there's a positive and there's a negative to it. The positive is that we have so many people involved in the process, and it's important for them to understand the process and the issues, because they become the legislative body at one point during the year. And so the more they know, the more informed they are, the better off we are. And so their participation is critical. So I think, like I said, that there is an opportunity for people to be involved, and that's getting them involved with our committees, commissions, and boards so that they could be better informed.
So we are almost out of time, believe it or not, because we can talk about this stuff forever. So I wanted to kind of conclude by giving you a chance to share lessons learned with the whole rest of the region. What have you walked away from this fall from that people who live in other towns or participate in boards in other towns, what are some of the lessons that you've learned that other people could learn from too?
Well, the critical one is really just providing opportunities for input and engagement, and demonstrating how their input and engagement had an impact on the outcome of a particular policy. Or what happens a lot of time is we have these engagement opportunities for the community, and there's no follow-up on how it may have impacted them or how their input or comments had an impact on the ultimate outcome of that. And so I think that's one of the critical pieces that is often missing in our engagement strategies, is that we've got to follow through and be able to provide the opportunities for people to comment and engage us on critical issues in town, and then communicate how their input and participation had an impact on the outcome, so that everyone feels like they're making a difference.
It's certainly not unique to Truro.
No, but it is ultimately one of the. There's engagement strategies that are out there for local communities, and that's one of the key strategies that we really need to be really highlighting. The other piece is just really being open as a town manager to meet with local residents, setting up times and opportunities for them to meet with you, and allowing them to voice their concerns and make recommendations, and then following up with them to make sure that that their comments were heard. So working with staff, a lot of times we get great recommendations. So. Or comments that we need to follow up. One of the things we're doing now is I'm having town manager coffees, and before I have the next one, we always have a follow up, either email or posting that answers all the questions that were asked during the meeting, because it's not just them that have an opportunity to hear it. We want the entire community to hear what those responses are. So those are just two lessons learned that we've had. Yeah.
And it's really unusual. If one person has a question, there aren't 10 more who have the same question. Just that one brave person raised their hand and asked it the first time, right?
and I think put it in those questions and that opportunity in a setting where it's not us speaking down or to people. It's more about a roundtable discussion and everyone having an opportunity. Make it comfortable. Make it an opportunity for people to really engage in conversation on these critical issues, because I think there is this perception that we speak down or speak to our residents, and that's obviously not helpful.
That's kind of ironic, right? That we're the social species, and the thing we seem to have the most trouble with is figuring out how to communicate with each other.
Yeah, it's. There's one of the other things I think we're trying to do is trying to get the right information out to the right people in the community, and we do monitor communications throughout the town. We in terms of we do listen to our residents both on social media, in newspaper articles, on Lower Cape TV, whatever it might be. And we want to make sure that we get the right information out to the community if they may have misperceived something or had gotten the wrong information from a local resident. So I think one of our areas of focus is really try to make sure that we're keeping aware of what's going on in town and the communications that are going around, and making sure that we get the right information out to the community so that they have the right information to make decisions in the future, maybe at town meeting, at an election. So it's just something that it's something that's very critical as a town manager and town manager's office, that we are listening and we're responding and we're providing the right information to the community.
Thank you very much for being with us. This has been Teresa Martin. We have been here with Red Nun Talks, talking with Darrin Tangeman, who is the town manager in the town of Truro, about really critical issues of communication and engagement, which become that much more critical as our towns all grapple with some pretty big issues that are going to affect us all, whether we're here full-time, part-time, or we just love this place. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Teresa.